Welcome. Welcome.
Welcome. I'm Tren.
I'm Lee.
And we are the tarot dealers. In case you can't work it out from up there. Just two old ducks with their tarot card.
We are indeed. So what are we talking about?
We are talking about comparisons today.
We are
talking about comparisons.
Yeah, comparisons on cards that people often get confused by, or that the feedback has been that these are the cards that people are confused by. So that's what we're going to be looking at. But first and foremost, we're going to pick a card. Pick a card.
And we are using the Light Seers deck today.
Right.
Which is just, I don't know, I just find this deck such a beautiful, soft energy.
I love the deck too.
Yeah.
A modern take on it.
Yeah, exactly. I'd say this is the one.
All right, what
it's the Hierophant.
So, what do we know about the Hierophant?
The Hierophant traditionally is all about that spiritual teacher, isn't it? I always think it's spiritual teacher, spiritual mentor. And sometimes you're looking for that.
Yeah, sometimes you are looking for that. It often can speak to like tradition and conformity too. So it's like, is this the beginning of new traditions? Are you starting something new?
Or you're breaking the rules.
Are you breaking the rules, right? So it's that kind of energy.
And this one, it's got a completely different energy to the Rider-Waite and other traditional ones. But this one is very joyful, almost looking forward to the journey, looking forward to the breaking the rules,
absolutely. And like I see that, and like for those of you who are listening, as you look at the Light Seers deck, there's stairs that sit behind a really joyful man, and it reaches up into the light, which is we can get that a little bit closer. As you look at that, it kind of looks like the patterning at the top might actually be like a little mandala, or actually the tree of life, right? Because it looks like a tree to me. And that to me speaks about ascension. So I feel like there's this spiritual ascension, this spiritual growth. So, so a lot of us might be experiencing that at this time.
Look forward to it. And I mean, I can't even speak at the moment, but it's like, do not worry or do not fear the changes.
Yeah, no fear, right? No fear. Yeah. It's just, okay, maybe it's a breaking of the old.
Yes. And if it's, evolution. Exactly, we have to break down barriers or rules to evolve, don't we?
Absolutely, to evolve. I love that. So that's the message.
Yep.
That's the message that we get for today.
So we will put the photo of this card on Facebook, Instagram, whatever, so you can actually see, and you can study it yourself if you don't have this deck.
Yeah, let us know what it is for you. We'd love to hear that, because this is a very sharing space that we want to create. We're not necessarily going to follow all the traditional rules. So it is very much about helping people connect to their own innate wisdom, so that you learn to trust yourself, basically, because that's the name of the game, right?
Exactly.
Just trust yourself. This is the only person you ever really need to trust. It's yourself. Because no matter what's going on out there, all you got to do is trust that you will handle whatever it is that's going on out there at the end of the day. So we are teaching that through the different tarot techniques that we use, because that's what we like to do. And
like we say, if you relate to what we're saying, great. If you don't, great.
We're just two old ducks who like playing with tarot cards, and we have a slightly different perspective, and then we might have the same kind of perspective. Interesting.
But let us know if your perspective is different. We'd love to know.
We would love to know.
Because we're all learning. We're on this journey to learn, aren't we?
Absolutely. I don't think you can ever stop learning.
No.
I think I don't know, I've been doing this gig a long time, and like I can pick up a card, 40 years later, and look and go, I've never seen that.
Exactly.
Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
But never seen it. But anyway, we'll get on with it today. Yes. So we're doing comparisons with cards that sometimes people go, well, right, what's the difference? Well, that's been the feedback that we've received. So the first two we're starting with is the Lovers and the Devil.
Now, we're using the Rider-Waite cards.
Yeah, using the Rider-Waite
because they're very, you can see the difference. It's very different.
Very, very different.
And the feeling is different between all of these cards. The feeling is different between the two cards too.
It is very different. So we're going to look at this as like these two particular cards, like as a polarity, right? So like, what is so different about them, basically? And there are things that are similar. Right? And one of the first things that are similar oddly, is the numbers, believe it or not.
And I have not seen this before, so this is really freaky.
So we have a 6, right? When we look at the Lover's card, it's numbered 6. When we look at the Devil's card, it's numbered at 15. So in numerology, we add the numbers together. 5 and 1, or 1 and 5 is 6. 6. So they're both 6s. They both speak about relationships of different kinds, connections, disconnections of different kinds. So there's some of the similarities, right? So a 6 is about, tell us what a 6 is
It's
about.
all about, or it's quite a journey actually. And when you start a journey, you've got to start it, but you've got to finish something first. It's like a departure. You've got to leave something to start that journey of discovery, basically.
Matches the hierophant, right? Can't make this shit up, seriously.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so once you get moved through and you're present through that transition, you're not rushing, whatever, the outcome will always be harmonious.
Yes.
Always
so
be
this is what's in
harmonious.
common with these cards is that there is
Yeah.
this harmonious
Yeah.
thread, believe it or not, that even rolls through this
Even
card.
with that one, yes.
Now it's interesting because I'm just going to digress for a second. When we look at relationships, right, just relationships alone, this guy, whilst it can represent a whole lot of other things, which I'll get into in a moment, but this can speak about hot sex. This can speak about
It's the
passion
lust,
and
isn't
the
it?
lust and all of that. So it speaks to that as well.
Exactly.
All right.
And maybe where you shouldn't go.
Well, yes, the temptation, right? No, no, no.
Temptation.
Yeah, the temptation. Okay, so as a polarity, the Lovers. Now we're going to start with the devil. I'm like, what
The
was
devil first.
start
The
with
devil.
the devil? Okay, so the devil, he speaks of the consciousness of bondage. So there's this awareness that we're kind of tied up.
Yeah, chained up to something.
Chained up to something, and you can see on the Rider-Waite deck how they're actually chained here, right? So that's can be a very conscious awareness, and yet it also speaks to the unconscious urges, right? So unconscious urges. So if you were looking at this card and this is the part you were drawn to, then you would be asking questions of the person sitting opposite you or of yourself, depends who you're reading for. Is this an unconscious urge that is being brought to my attention, or am I consciously aware that I'm chained, trapped, tied, bound to something? And if so, how the fuck am I going to get out of that?
Exactly. And if you actually look at that card, the chain that around their neck, it's not tight. So you can wiggle out, you can lift it over. So you have the power to change things, to unchain yourself to certain things.
Yeah, get out of that prison you put yourself in. And speaking of the prison you put yourself in, this card, this devil card, can also speak to mental health issues, right? So if this was to come up in a reading and that's where your mind went, then you'd be looking at the bigger end on the mental health side of it. Yeah. So that's what that would speak to. So now the devil would also like us to believe that things are exactly as we see them, right? And I don't know about you, but over the last few years, I've learned that's bullshit.
Exactly.
Things are not always what's right in front of you, right? So you might need to be digging a little bit deeper.
Or widen your vision, widen your perspective.
Widen your perspective, just because you think you're right doesn't mean you necessarily are. And if you think you're right, and that's about trying to prove someone else wrong, right? So we don't want to do that either, right? No judgment. We just simply want to be. So yes, broaden the perspective. I love that. So he sits on this cube here, right? See that cube on this Rider-Waite deck? He sits on this, devil sits up on this cube, and it looks like half a cube. Right? So it's like you've only got half the story.
Only got half the knowledge, haven't you? You only know half the story.
You only know half the story, absolutely.
So why are you chaining yourself to not knowing everything?
That's right. And like he wants to rely on appearances, right?
Yes.
So it might appear that he knows things and he's sitting on this box full of knowledge, but it's not a full box, right?
Exactly. Or it's empty.
Or it's empty. That is a really good what do you say, challenge to it all. I'm not trying to find. Yeah. So typically the devil will stand for the temptation, the greed, the materialism, the bullying, the unhealthy relationships. Now relationships can be what kind of relationships?
They can be addictive, don't they? Or toxic.
Yes, it can be addictive or toxic relationships. And that can be in business, in romance, in friendships,
exactly.
in,
whatever relationships. just sort of stand back a little bit if the devil card does come out, and you just sort of not question the relationship, but just don't take everything on appearances.
Absolutely. Don't take everything on appearances, because it may be a bit unequal in some way. Maybe there's a bit of manipulation going on. So just take a step back, right? So this is what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Let me see what else have I got here. Yes, so self-indulgence, self-determined. So it's more about the I in the partnership. This is the I in the partnership.
It's all about me. It's all about me.
That's it. It's
Look
all
at
about
me. Look at me.
Look at me. Look at me. Yeah, all of that. Yeah. So now the freedom that he craves, right? Because it's a craving.
Yeah.
So the freedom in this card is linked to the desire of it, right? So the desire of freedom or the need for freedom is what it's linked to. Because each individual, we look at that closely on this Right Away card, stands alone. They're not really together, are
They're
they?
very separate.
They're very separate. So very interesting. So now we're going to look at the lovers.
Lovers. So
Right?
we'll get that up so you can actually see. And it's like it's got a brighter feeling,
Yeah.
freer feeling.
Freer feeling, yeah, absolutely a freer feeling. So this is going to speak to like healthy relationships, equal relationships, and it has, well, it can have the unconditional love feeling through it, whereas the devil will have conditions attached. Conditions. You must be like this, or
if you love me, you'll do that.
Absolutely, it's that kind of thing. Whereas
in here, it's very much very equal, very.
Let's do this together.
How do you feel about this? And sort of the communication's a bit more open.
It is more open, and you consider it of your partner.
Yeah.
So that's what that, or whoever it is you're in that relationship with. So that's what that is talking about. So the love is unified.
Yes.
Right. It's more unified, open, as you said. I love that you pointed that out. And they see themselves in everything. Right. So there's this bigger perspective, because you mentioned it before. Yeah. Now the thing about it is they can be a little naive.
Yes.
Right. It's going to be a little
bit
naive,
innocent,
a little bit innocent, a little bit unaware, so a little bit like that. And still they are journeying towards that harmony.
Yeah. Yes. And because it's a 6, if there's any obstacles along that journey, they will probably work together to clear the obstacles.
Absolutely.
Whereas this one, there's an obstacle, let's just forget it.
Yeah, forget it, or I'll just do what's right for me.
Yeah.
You know, in that kind of thing. Yeah. And when we're looking at the energy of the 6, right? So we talk about the 6 chakra, which is our 6th sense and everything. The devil will look at that through the physical context. Okay, so he will want to work with what he knows will suit him materialistically, physically, whereas the lovers will look at it more of a spiritual aspect. So that's the difference between the two types of relationships, if you will. So I hope that makes sense.
That's good.
Excellent.
Hopefully giving you a bit of perspective on those 2 cards, because sometimes those 2 cards can come out together in a reading and you go, holy shit, how does this work? You know. So
you get to see the polarities of the relationship, and remember, it can speak about how good that bedroom activity is. That way.
What do you have to improve, or
you're not manipulated, not aware.
Exactly.
Yes. So a bit like that. So now we are going to move on to the High Priestess and the Hermit.
So another 2 cards that can be a little bit confusing sometimes if they appear. In a reading on their own or together, they can be a bit confusing.
Yeah, they can be, yeah. So we're just going to lightly touch on all these things, because obviously you can go on a deep dive rabbit hole.
You can go forever.
We're just going to go fairly lightly, and hopefully that will provide some insight for you, right? So we're going to start with the High Priestess. So let's talk about her for a second. So she's intuitive. She represents the mystic, the magical side. She's the feminine energy. She talks about secrecy as well, so secrecy and mystery. She also tells us to listen to our inner voice,
which a lot of us don't.
A lot of us don't.
We hear it and we ignore it. You
We
go,
do
oh,
hear it in
that
the
was
room.
just me talking to myself.
That's right. That's right. And she reminds us we need to go deeper than that. We need to go deeper than that little voice to dive right in and see what's actually going on. Now, she will also ask you to follow your senses rather than what you see. Right? So she's very much about what do you feel?
What do you feel?
Follow that feeling. That feeling will lead you somewhere. So this is what like she's talking about, if this makes sense. And she does that to help herself, right? Because she wants to help herself. I'm just going to flick to the hermit for a bit, then we'll come back
Then
again.
we'll come back, yeah.
So the hermit, he is a knowingness through experience, right? So this dude might have had a midlife crisis, learned a bit of shit, and is willing to share what he's learned. So that's what he's like, right? He can speak to solitude,
Getting away from things.
Getting away, yeah. So he can speak to getting away. Now he can be lonely or alone. They're two different feelings, right? And he can be either, depending on what cards are around him as well, of course. But he will take what he has learned from his life experience and then decide how he's going to proceed, right? So he has to have been through something before he makes those decisions, if that makes sense.
Yes. And those decisions are made from experience.
Absolutely,
From
decisions are made from an experience, yeah. And he's more about helping others, right? So she'll be helping self.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that because you're checking in with yourself.
Yeah.
How do I feel about this? Is this aligned for me? Is this true for me?
Like sort of feeling those feelings, isn't it?
Feeling those feelings, yeah. Whereas this guy is like, been there, done that.
Yeah.
Let me help you through.
Exactly.
So he's a bit like that. Now, if they were to show in a reading together, right, or somewhere there, and relationship was the thing, then this would be letting you know that you were dealing with a healthy man, right, who was leading, allowing the woman to sit in her feminine and trust.
Trust.
So that is a really cool combination to have when you're doing some kind of relationship reading. Yeah, if that makes sense. So that's what I would say about those. So the High Priestess is about how do I trust the situation and myself and how can I best navigate that, whereas the Hermit is
how can I help others?
How can I help
through
others?
my own experience, through my own journey, everything. How can I help others? Because,
yeah.
Like you said, been there, done that, got the t-shirt.
So he'll lead, right? So both of them know.
Yeah.
Both of them want you to go within and feel what those answers are for you.
Look within
for the answer. Find that wisdom, that knowledge within.
Because a lot of times we can keep asking questions externally, you know, asking other people, what should I do? Instead of going within and finding out what we actually need to do for ourselves.
That's a really good point. So when these cards come up, it's definitely about what can I do for myself, right? So yeah, very cool. All right, what have we got up next?
I think we've got the Temperance and Star.
Temperance and the Star. Okay, how many of you get confused with these two? Hey, how many get confused with these two?
And especially me, temperance. The word tricks me up sometimes. What does temperance mean? You know, but then you put them both together, and you go, I don't know. I'm going to
So I'm going to show you something about these. Again, we're using the Rider-Waite deck, right? So when we look at temperance on the Rider-Waite deck, there's a foot that is in the water, right? Now that speaks to the subconscious things or the deep things that are occurring, right? And on the star, the foot that's near the water is on top of the water. Now, that's a very conscious thing to do. So temperance is about the subconscious, unconscious. Temperance is about the other way around. Right. The temperance is about the unconscious, subconscious stuff. And the star is about the conscious things that you need to do or decisions that you need to make or steps that you will take, right? So that's the first thing that's different. When we look at temperance on its own, this piece here, which is where we have the two cups moving one thing from the other, which is known as alchemy, right? It's the magic of it. It would speak to the tension that creates that magic. So temperance has a little bit of tension in it. So it's the building up of
outcome, isn't it?
It is the creation that's coming. So it speaks to that, whereas the star is kind of like, oh, thank fuck that storm's over.
It's done.
And it's done and I'm free, right? So that's a little bit of difference if that helps you in those two. So temperance obviously speaks to finding balance.
Yes. I was going to say, getting back to that, temperance is always like you're on the journey, you're halfway through, whereas the star is you've got the outcome, you've got the result.
Yeah.
And when we're in the journey, sometimes it's just, do I have to keep going? It's not working out how I thought or whatever. And then you finally go, yeah, it has worked out.
Yeah, keep going.
Keep going. Yeah.
That's temperance speaks to us of patience.
Yeah.
Be
Who's got
patient,
patience?
my phone, right? Be patient, right? A little bit like check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
So temperance is like that. And it speaks to like unifying the opposing sources or just sources in general, right? Putting it together. Actively mixing and balancing to find the right mix for who?
So for yourself.
For yourself, absolutely, or whoever you're reading for, right? Absolutely. And then it's about learning how to apply what you've just discovered.
Yes, exactly. Put it into practice.
Put it into practice. I love that, see? I need training. The star speaks to freedom. Lots of freedom and spiritual rejuvenation. It's that
that faith, that hope.
It is the faith and hope,
that
absolutely.
Things either are working out or they have worked.
Exactly. So the star will focus on the beauty.
Yeah.
Focus on the beauty of the situation because it's already happened, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. To be open in life and to not be penned in. So the star is very much again about that freedom. I don't want to be trapped. I don't want to be held into something. And it's finding power and inspiration through being open and generous. So the star will speak to vulnerability because of the nakedness. So and the exposure. Yeah. Being exposed. If this makes sense.
And sort of not to worry about that vulnerability, not to
right.
Close yourself in about the vulnerability. Sometimes we do.
Yeah, sometimes we do.
You know, okay, own it. Own the vulnerability.
Own it, absolutely. Own that. And both of them speak to finding or taking a more balanced approach to life in general. So yeah, I hope that's kind of helped. The temperance is the build up and the star is the result of the outcome. Yeah, the result of the outcome. Yeah. So I hope that makes sense. And then we have one more. One more. And this is, I think this is the one that sort of tricks people up most often because the actual words are quite similar. They are. It's justice and judgment. And they're really two different things. But they do trick people up, don't they? They do trick people up. So we're going to speak to judgment firstly. Yep. So judgment, darling. Oh, judgment. Wrong one. Trick myself. You're right. Okay. So where am I? Okay. Judgment is about well, it speaks of balance. It speaks about getting closure. It's about being rebirthed or reborn. So it's this new perspective that you have after the fact, and you're ready to take that ownership and say, yes, this is who I am. It's using your own judgment, your very own judgment, right? That internal stuff about yourself. It reminds us of the final resolution, if you will, and it's divine justice. Yeah. Divine justice. When I see a card, this card in a reading, and people are like questioning, oh, am I doing the right thing, kind of thing, I often say, you know, judgment says that it wouldn't matter what you did, where you were, who you were with, this shit's going to happen anyway. So it's a bit like that. It's that divine outcome. So it's like a spiritual clean slate. Yeah, I always think it's quite like an awakening. It's like your eyes are finally open. Yeah, seeing what's actually been going on. Yeah, for yourself. For yourself. So it's like this inside deliberation. Yes. That you've come to this awakening and awareness. Yeah, I very much love that. So it's like the bigger picture of life's lessons. It's kind of like where we go, oh, now I know. Now I get it. I understand it. So it's kind of that stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas justice, when we think about
Yeah.
that, we think about the law, and it can represent the law
It can.
100%. So it can be an order from a judge. So that kind of tells you straight away that this is more of a human justice, right? And it can be ongoing. It's like a karma. Okay, it's a law of cause and effect. Justice reminds us to be truthful and fair and unbiased. And some situations in life just don't feel that way.
They're just not fair sometimes.
They just don't feel that way. And that's when judgment comes in and says, hey, but here's the bigger picture as to why.
Yeah.
So there may be some learning in it, whereas justice is kind of like the beginning of that piece, really, isn't it? So it's asking us to practice discernment, right? Practice discernment, and it's the earthly clean slate. Right? It's all that earthly stuff. Yeah. Trying to play fair, not necessarily feeling that it's always fair. We've said that. So it's this outside deliberation. So judgment's this inside thing, whereas justice is more outside.
Yeah, so this could be more internal.
Internal.
That we're doing ourselves, and justice maybe other people are making decisions for us, maybe.
Yeah, that can be that too. It absolutely can be that. Both of them are about balance. Right, so justice is about the lessons in life, whereas judgment is about the bigger picture of those lessons. Hope that makes sense. Yeah. And there's another thing where
there's an interesting thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the numbers again, and if you look at the numbers, so justice is 11, and judgment is 20. And again, if you break justice down, 11, 1 plus 1 is 2. 2.
So
again, they're both twos.
They're both twos. Yeah, and that's all about the balance,
again,
right?
The balance, the harmony, the yin and yang of things, isn't it?
The yin and yang of things, yeah. So looking at that, so that's what I would say about those. Is there anything else you want to add?
I did not know about the numbers, the 2 and 6s. What's the justice and judgment? I think it was the lovers and
the devil. Yeah.
Which is kind of freaky, isn't it?
I know, right? Kind of freaky. But yeah, there you go. So I hope that has helped when we're looking at those specific cards to show you a little bit more clarity around what the differences are and what the similarities are, because these cards, as the feedback has been, that these are the cards that our listeners and our followers have found somewhat confusing.
Yeah, so cleared up some confusion, hopefully, and added a few more layers.
Yeah, layers, all about the layers.
The layers.
Layer upon layer, all about the layers. So we hope you've enjoyed this episode.
Yes.
So like, share, hit that
comment,
bell button, comment.
Tell us what your experience is about these cards, or if you'd like to know more, or you've got questions. Yeah, we'd love, because we'd love to investigate and dive in. As you can tell, the feedback we get will go on a bit of a journey, and see what we can find for you. And we hope you've enjoyed that. And thank you so much for listening. Yes, thank you again. Big love. We'll catch you next time. Bye.